Toys are unfortunately a declining industry right now. They're declining like almost 10% year over year, while digital play is dominating. Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft is like, how do we still protect the toy industry and get them ready for the future? It's not a physical versus digital, it's a physical and digital future. And how do we really enable that in a smart way that's good for all ages?
Okay, Sam here. We just got back from a 3-week journey that took us to Rio, to Seoul, Korea, to Singapore, all to different crypto events. A lot of stuff came out of that. My thoughts haven't even cohered completely. But one of the things that I noticed, especially in Asia, both Seoul and in Singapore, was still the kind of how much people are obsessed with toys, with IP brands that are, based in worlds of like anime, whether it's like a One Piece or Attack on Titan, all that stuff is still so popular. You go to any Pop Mart in Asia, it is packed. People are buying everything they can when it comes to not just Labubus, but really all this different IP in the toy universe. And I thought it'd be interesting for us to have a conversation with someone who is focused on the evolution of toys, specifically digital, because there was a big run up 21, 22, 23 in digital collectibles and toys on chain. And that sort of quieted down a little bit. We're starting to hear some rumblings of that coming back. While we were out in Asia, got to spend some time with Weinraub from Cryptoys, one of the first groups that raised a bunch of money and was trying to work through how this works. They work with Star Wars, Disney, Mattel, a bunch of big brands. And I just thought it'd be great to get like the state of the digital collectible from the toy perspective and from kind of a younger, not like let's buy an NFT and see if it goes to $50,000. So after the break, we'll come back with Will from Cryptoys to get his perspective on where we're at in the digital collectible space when it comes to toys, and specifically Cryptoys, the project that he is the CEO of, where they're going as a brand as we focus this season so much on the brands who are building in crypto. Stay tuned after the break. Myself with Will Weinraub talking about the evolution of digital collectibles.
Break the cycle of exploitation, break down the barriers to truth, break into the next generation of privacy, break free. Free to scroll without being monetized, free from censorship, freedom without fear. We deserve more when it comes to privacy. Experience the next generation of blockchain that is private and inclusive by design. Break free with Midnight. Visit midnight.network/break-free. Built for speed, scale, and simplicity, Bridge helps businesses send, store, accept, and launch stablecoins instantly. Serve global customers without navigating the complexities of setting up crypto rails. It's how companies like X, Shopify, and AirTM unlock new markets, reduce FX costs, and move money at internet speed.
All right, we're here with Will Weinraub, the co-founder and CEO of OnChain Studios. Cryptoys, I would say, is the public-facing brand here. And, just spent some time with Will over in Asia and got to talking a lot about digital collectibles and the toy industry in general and collector culture. And I thought it'd be great to have him on. So, Will, first off, just like, I think it'd be great to give the TLDR of who you are, what OnChain Studios is, but also kind of what got you there beforehand.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you, Sam, for inviting me on. Happy to be here. So my background, I've been in tech for a very long time. Born and raised in Miami. My first venture-backed company was called Live Ninja. It was a video chat marketplace. We ended up selling that company to IDT Telecom. And, OnChain Studios and Cryptoys, the journey into this company is actually quite interesting. Right after I had sold that company, Live Ninja, my daughter happened to be really into these collectibles, these like LOL surprise collectibles, which was like the hottest thing in the toy space. And she was collecting tons of them. We were spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on these toys. And it was at the same time I had sold the company in 2017, and this was 2018. My daughter was 6 at the time. This was the same time that I discovered NFTs. I discovered NFTs through a Fred Wilson blog post. For those that know Fred Wilson, Union Square Ventures, one of my favorite forward-thinking VCs, in the industry. He writes a blog post one day that he's investing in a new company called Dapper Labs. They got this thing called Crypto Kitties. Check it out. It's a cat on the blockchain. And I just got really, really interested in what NFTs could be. I've been a gamer and comic book collector, and the idea of putting all this stuff on chain and having digital scarcity was fascinating. So I dove headfirst into crypto kitties. It would have been nice to dive headfirst into crypto punks instead. That would have been better for my wallet, but that's a story for another time. But lots of crypto kitties. And then my daughter's love for these unboxing toys really perked my interest because it was the hottest thing in the physical toy space. It was like literally generating billions of dollars in revenue. Every toy company was doing it. And she would open these toys. There'd be a delightful unboxing experience, and she'd put it off to the side. And then basically, she wouldn't play with it ever again. They'd just be collecting dust. And then, of course, like as all kids do, she'd pick up her iPad and spend the next couple hours on her iPad. So she had the idea. She said, "Hey, Dad, wouldn't it be cool if these toys were in the iPad and I could play with them in different ways?" And then that clicked with me because I thought, hey, I just discovered this NFT stuff through Fred, and you could put them on chain because so much of toys and collectibles are about, preserving value and buying, selling, and trading. So that was the idea. My daughter kind of had the idea for it, and we created like a little father-daughter side project at my dining room table. Depths of the bear market from 2018 to 2020. Nobody cared about NFTs whatsoever or crypto in general during that time. But then obviously the NFT run hit in late 2020, early 2021, and we started getting a lot of interest from partners, VCs, etc. So me and my co-founders decided to make this a full-time company, and that's why we created OnChain Studios to house the Cryptoys project, and off into the races we went, starting in 2021.
When you started, obviously, like the market was really hot. I'm interested in you start, and then within probably a year or two, we start to see a cooling of that. So as like a founder who had this great idea that had been nursing for a number of years and inspired by, at the time, CryptoKitties were great, but not super valuable, nor were CryptoPunks at that time either. So, everyone sort of rushed in when the financialization happened, right? But you have had to continue to build now, 2025, we're a number of years into it. I guess, did you think, hey, this is the future of everything and we have to get in now and we're going to do it on this platform, called NFTs? Or were you sort of like, there's something really interesting here that we have to figure out and maybe this is a way to go?
Totally. I think it's the latter, right? And I think the financialization of everything, that's never what got me into NFTs in the first place, right? What got me into NFTs in the first place was the idea of digital scarcity, which I thought was fascinating, just in general. How do you have digital scarcity, and what opportunities could exist if digital scarcity really, was a thing? And I mean, we've had digital scarcity for a long time, but it was really in one format, which was domain names. That was the OG digital scarcity. It was almost like land. If you got homes.com or water.com, it was almost like you were buying like plots of land on the internet. And NFTs to me represented the scarcity and the ability to do what domain names did for everything else on the internet, which I thought was such a unique opportunity for things like video games and comics and digital assets. And so to me, that was what was really intriguing by it. And I think the financialization of everything, it ended up maybe setting us back a few years as far as utility goes and as far as like what type of builders we're attracting. Because when you start with financialization, and if every conversation is about money to start, it kind of reads as scammy or a money grab or something like that. Like when we went out to Comic-Con with Mattel and we tried to explain Cryptoys to people or NFTs to people, like old school collectors of what NFTs are, immediately they're like, "Oh, I heard NFTs are a scam." Well, why do you think NFTs are a scam? They're like, "Oh, it's all about money." Because that's really what the conversation was always about. It was always like, buy NFT, number go up, hopefully, and sell it to somebody else. So to me, it was always about like the types of things that you could enable through this technology and what digital scarcity meant across a number of industries. The financialization, I think it was a byproduct of everything, no doubt. It's crypto by nature, so you have to talk about money. But I do think it set us back a number of years as far as utility and the type of builders that we attract to this space.
We've spoken to a lot of folks in the game industry, from Roblox to Pokemon Go, a bunch of different people on this show. And a lot of people, when we talk about digital scarcity, I guess it makes me wonder the following, which is, if I am Fortnite and I'm selling skins, my goal is to sell as many as possible.
That's right. Yeah.
And I remember there was a number being thrown a few years ago that, the cosmetic purchases in video games were a $50 billion industry. I don't know if that's still accurate or not, but clearly there's a tremendous amount of people who are comfortable buying a car in Forza or, a skin in Fortnite or a tool in something else, right? So no one thinks that. I think that's not the case. The market that says, hey, how do we create finding those Grail Jordans, but now make it digital,
Right.
is one that I think is great for those who want to make money because you can find the needle in a haystack.
Yep.
But I do wonder if like video games being larger than the movie industry and music industry combined, if actually mass is the real play there. And so I look at some of the stuff you guys have done and like, deals with Disney and Star Wars. And I'm like, don't you want everyone to have, Darth Vader or Leia, right? And yes, I guess someone might get the special one, but we still want to sell millions if we can, right? So I guess how much of it is really, when you look at the toy market, you and I were in Asia and everyone's wearing little stuffed toys on their backpacks,
Yep.
right? I can imagine being Pop Mart and being like, this is just the best thing that's ever happened to us.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's a balance. To me, it's an and, it's not an or. Like you could have mass market appeal and mass market products and then making some of them scarce. I mean, the trading card industry is built on that, right? You have millions and millions of commons, and then you have the one, ultra foil holographic Charizard that everybody's looking for to preserve that kind of chase element. We're looking at things like you just mentioned exactly. When we're in Asia, everybody's got Labubus. And that whole thing of blind boxes and scarcity, and there are commons, but there's the one that is really rare, is really what drives a lot of that, consumer behavior. So to me, we're not really reinventing the wheel. We're just making them digital. And with blockchain, you have provenance and you have provable scarcity that, hey, these companies aren't just going to print another 10 million out of thin air and mess with supply and demand mechanics. But I do think what you're saying is 100% true. Like Fortnite doesn't care. They want to sell as many as possible. It seems like at that same point, there's consumers that don't care because they just want to buy things. They want to look cool on the internet. But then there are the other aspect of it where it's like, hey, there's this new unique technology. It might not be where things are right now, but we really think this is where the puck is going, where people are going to buy things. I know as a father, I'm spending a ton of money on Roblox in-game purchases and Fortnite in-game purchases. And there's just no doubt, I've had this conversation with my kids who keep asking me, hey, Dad, can I get another $20 on Fortnite? I'm like, how about you sell all the other items that I bought for the past year that you don't even care about anymore? And they're like, well, that would be awesome. Can we do that? And the answer is no, you can't do that right now. But I think that once that light bulb hits and once that genie is out of the bottle, it's very hard for people to be like, well, that's interesting. Why can't I have that type of functionality in this app that I see here on this Web3 app? So I think for us as a lot of innovators and people that are doing things in the space, we see blockchain and in-game assets that are on blockchain as kind of skate where the puck is going versus where things are in the past. For IP holders like the Disneys that we work with, Mattels, et cetera, I mean, this is a great model for them because you have enforceable royalties. If they're trading hands on the secondary, like right now, people trade physical things on secondary. Disney's not seeing a cut of that or anything like that. This allows them to have licensing and royalties in perpetuity, protects on counterfeits. There's so many benefits to it. But you're right, there are aspects that are still a little premature, but we do think this is where the future is going. And we want to be there at that inflection point when the masses do have that aha moment, because we see a lot of times where a Web2 consumer buys a Cryptoy for the first time. It's oftentimes their first crypto asset. And immediately they have the aha moment. When they bought it, they pulled it, they got the one that they were looking for, but then they bought 5 that had duplicates and they were able to sell that to reinvest in other things. We think that is going to be an aha moment at scale, and we're betting on that future, but it's certainly not where we're at right now, for sure.
I think about this, our friend Ian Rogers over at Ledger, when we've interviewed him a number of times, but he talked about that the digital music revolution took 15, 18 years before it became Spotify and Apple Music.
That's a great comp. Yep.
Yeah. And so he was always like, in most things crypto, he's like, it's just about time. It doesn't mean everything's going to work. It just means we still might be 4 years into a cycle that actually is a 20-year cycle.
I fully agree with that. Yeah. And I think the MP3 stuff and the digital music stuff is a really great comp, because I actually think NFTs are going the way of the MP3. Meaning, remember back when MP3s first hit the scene, it was like Napster, MP3s, MP3 player. MP3 was the vernacular. It was you described it as an MP3, right? Nowadays, you're streaming digital music on Spotify. That's an MP3 on a server somewhere that you're streaming. The consumer and the user just doesn't think about it as an MP3. They don't think about the file type. So I believe that's where NFTs are heading. Early parts, NFT, just like we talked about MP3, but soon people are just going to interact with a digital toy or digital asset. It will be an NFT, but the user's not going to care or know it, just like they're streaming an MP3 on Spotify. So yeah, I think that's a great comparison.
It is. It unfortunately gets me to the place where I think about how we all rent music. We don't buy music anymore.
Sure, it's true. Yeah.
But we are buying bags and shoes and toys and clothes. Like we are buying things that feel precious to us, but almost every one of those things is still in the real world. So what do you think it takes? Does it take your kids' generation growing up more and them saying, hey, yes, of course I want to look cool IRL, but I also want to be able to have my individuality represented digitally?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. There's no doubt about it. And I have a front row seat right now with my kids, and just all the digital socialization and all the social pressures that they incur through Snapchat and TikTok and things like that. I do believe it matters more to this generation and the next generation than it ever mattered to us. And interestingly enough, it matters a lot to us, in things like Instagram and TikTok and how we portray ourselves online and Twitter. And it's just compounded as the generations continue to go on and they become more digitally centric. Look, their lives are inherently digital. I mean, we were talking about this in Asia. Our generation, Sam, you and me, are like one of the last few generations where we remember a pre-digital world and a post-digital world. These kids only remember a digital world where they have these magical slabs of glass in their pocket that have the entire history of the world and can access every single human being on the planet at any given time and take 4K, pictures and videos. It's just an interesting dynamic to think about. And their lives are inherently digital, and they spend most of their time on these devices. We were talking about it when we were linking up in person, like Fortnite and Roblox. You think about it as a video game, or we look at it like a video game, it's really more so a digital social experience than anything else. Very similar, like if you and I were to catch up in New York and just play cards across the table, cards are like the secondary thing. It's really more so for you and I to catch up and have conversation. That's what Roblox and Fortnite are. My kids are in those worlds. They're catching up with their friends. They're talking about how their school day was or what they're going to do tomorrow, what they're going to wear tomorrow for school. And Fortnite's just in the background. You know what I mean? It's just like an activity like playing cards is to us. So I do think things like that matter. I mean, literally the K-pop Demon Hunter skins on Fortnite just dropped a couple days ago. And it's obviously one of the first things my kids are asking for now is when can they get the K-pop Demon Hunters? Because they want to represent themselves in a certain way online. So I do think it matters. And for us, we've always taken the approach from the toy industry perspective and these IP perspectives is like, hey, look, toys are unfortunately a declining industry right now. They're declining like almost 10% year over year, while digital play is dominating. Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft is like, how do we still protect the toy industry and get them ready for the future? It's not a physical versus digital, it's a physical and digital future. And how do we really enable that in a smart way that's good for all ages and keeping that in mind? So I do think it matters.
This episode is sponsored by Bridge, a Stripe company. Just as the internet made information global, stablecoins are making money global, and Bridge is the infrastructure powering that shift. Built for speed, scale, and simplicity, Bridge helps businesses send, store, accept, and launch stablecoins instantly, serve global customers without navigating the complexities of setting up crypto rails. It's how companies like X, Shopify, and AirTM unlock new markets, reduce FX costs, and move money at internet speed. Explore the future of global financial infrastructure at bridge.xyz.
I want to go to sort of when you have the conversations with these legacy brands, right? You've worked with Star Wars, you've worked with Mattel, you've probably a lot of other partnerships in play. What's that conversation like? Are they in 2025? Are they as bullish as about the opportunity? Are they more skeptical because of what happened in the NFT wave? Are they coming back because crypto's hot again? Like, what's your take on the brand meets digital collectible world?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think initially in the 2021 market, when everything was like really on fire, I think a lot of brands saw it as an easy way to make revenue. They're like, hey, this is hot right now. This is a trend. Let's get on it. It's unforecasted revenue for us. Let's do it. And I think now, kind of being through the cycles, you're really seeing who the true believers are. Like folks that were like, hey, let's do this because it's hot. Let's do this because it makes money. Or like, hey, is this really a paradigm shift that we believe in? And should we double, triple down on the paradigm shift? So the brands that we work with definitely see this as a paradigm shift in the future of the industry. And it's less about like, is crypto hot? Is crypto not? It's more so like, how are consumers behaving? Where are they interacting with brands? How can we meet them where they are? And what cool experiences can we do that's very innovative, that also, of course, impacts the bottom line, but also is like showcasing like new surface area for new product and launches and things like that. A lot of lessons learned in the first cycle for sure. I think we're going back to the spot where we got to get away from financialization. Hey, value will accrue if there is enough interest in the product. I think first and foremost, not the NFT space always had it backwards, in my opinion, where if you look at something like Pokemon built a brand, they built fandom, they built energy and excitement. When Pokemon first launched in the late 90s, a first edition Charizard wasn't worth much, right? But it was because of the fandom and the demand and the lore and the storytelling and the community that eventually, yes, 15 years later, a first edition Charizard is worth $250,000, right? The NFT space was born backwards, where it was like, here's an NFT because it's on chain, it's worth $250,000. Here's a Bored Ape, and all of a sudden it's worth six figures. We skipped the lore building and the fandom and the community and the mass marketing stuff. I believe that's really the focus right now, is building things that are more long tail. Initially, you have to make them accessible so people can buy them. They can't be price prohibitive. Like NFTs for so long was price prohibitive to any new entrants that wanted to participate in them. I mean, you remember, Sam, like when in 2021, the mint price of any new project was like 0.08 ETH, which was like $300 at the time. So it's like, if you want to even be in this market, you better have $300 to spend, and not a lot of people, have the ability to do so. So to circle back to your question on the brands, it's like the brands that are here believe that this is a paradigm shift, and they're here to double and triple down on it. And it's really about creating unique experiences, things that the blockchain enable that it wouldn't be in other areas or vectors. But it's less about like, how do we make sure that these NFTs are worth $50,000? I think people are kind of out of that meta and are still doubling down on it. And it's great to see folks like Disney, Mattel, and all these companies still believe, hey, this is the future. This is where this is going. We're patient enough to see this play out. And it's not here just for like, what is the numbers this quarter?
And I assume part of it is being prepared for when it actually changes, right?
Yes.
Like the idea of I could buy a character from you guys and have it be playable in Fortnite and Roblox and not have that to be an issue, right?
Yes.
Because, I'm sure the traditional game companies are like, stay away, right? We want to make everything inside. But we spoke to, this week we interviewed Hilmar from CCP Games, EVE Online, and they have 10 million players over the life of that game, but it is completely a user-based economy. They're coming to Web3 as well. They see the idea of, in a more sophisticated game world, you're looking at a younger set, right? But in a more sophisticated game world, people want to design the world they want to play in. They don't always love only the rails that a Roblox or a Fortnite might put on. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I'm wondering what are the kind of lessons that you think both you and the industry should take away from the last 3 years in order to build those brands of the future?
As far as like kind of the play patterns of Roblox and
I think in general, I think you hit it on the head, which is like Pokemon created a game first, right? In the same way, if you were wearing Jordans in 1987, you weren't, keeping them in the box at home. You were just wearing them. They were still valuable because they were expensive, right? But like, I do think if we had known, we all would have never worn our shoes. We would have never worn our clothes. We would have never unboxed our toys.
Right.
We would have just kept it all, right? But I do think that there is a ton of learnings about digital ownership that I think you have an insight on that is going to play out. But I'm wondering how that diverges from maybe some of the narratives that were happening in 21, 22, 23.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, for me, it's all going to be experience based, and we work with nostalgic brands that have an emotional resonance and an emotional connection. It's been really special for me to build these types of products and to see consumers buy them. Like, for example, like I saw a dude open up a Darth Vader Cryptoy and has that experience, and literally he wept. Like he was like crying from the emotional experience of it all, because it connected to him back as a kid when he was 8 years old, opening up a Darth Vader action figure, and he imagined the John Williams music playing in the background. He imagined the Darth Vader breathing at this like plastic action figure, and Cryptoys actually gave that to him. It gave him the sound, it gave him the music, it gave him the voice, etc. So it's interesting for me to kind of see that, and I'm very proud of the work we've done. And then what we're seeing also is brands like Masters of the Universe, which has no resonance to Gen Z and Gen Alpha completely. We're seeing parents that, you know, have an action figure collection of like Masters of the Universe. Their kids could care less about it. But all of a sudden, because it's digital now and they have this unboxing experience and it reminds them of the Fortnite play patterns and all this stuff, they care now about Masters of the Universe and they want to interact with it and be a part of, you know, that IP and revigorate that IP. So for me, it's all about now focusing on those type of experiences, those type of emotional resonances and connections that it provides, and providing cool things beyond the hyper financialization that we experienced in 21 and 22. I want to get closer kind of to the example that you put out about like things that made Fortnite great, things that made Roblox great, but also give it a little bit of a Web3 spin to it. I think a big part of where we may have missed the mark at the first iteration of NFTs were a lot of these consumers were trying to go at least to Web 2 and, you know, hide a lot of the Web 3 elements from it. And I think we need to really think about like, why is Web 3 great? And if we really believe about why Web 3 is great and why blockchain is great, educate people on why Web 3 is great and why blockchain is great and why it makes sense, instead of like trying to hide all these elements and like, you know, making it like completely invisible. There's a balance that needs to be had because you don't want to complicate it and you don't want to have MetaMask wallets and seed phrases and all that stuff. But we're still trying to figure out what that right balance is. And I think early on, brands were early on trying to get into the space and not lean too forward into crypto native culture. But I think now there's a little bit of a conversation to be had about integrating crypto and not necessarily red pilling people into crypto, but educating them about why this technology matters and why this is the future, and figuring out what that blend is. So
do you think though, I mean, I hear that, and I think there's a part of me that fully agrees. And then there's the other part of me that says, why are we talking about crypto at all? Right? Like,
yeah, 100%.
When looking at your product as it's evolved, it's still a very simple process. The UX is easy. It's, you know, I get what it is and you see it and you get it pretty quickly. And so, which is similar to the gameplay of a Pokemon or any of these other things. It's like, you got to make it fun first. You got to make it interesting. If I have to learn what blockchain I'm on and why, and the difference between what a gas fee is on Ethereum and Solana, like I feel like I've already lost that person.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So, you know, I think when you look at the road ahead, I mean, are you looking at it through the lens of, yes, I want to like not hide the wires fully of crypto and let people know this is, you know, because the digital ownership is maybe unique to a blockchain, but also are you looking at it to say, how do we just create more fun and joy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I believe the tough answer is I'm trying to do both at the same time, really. If I can do that, then I've achieved the mission, which is introduce it to people in a very simple way. You don't need seed phrases. You don't need to care about gas fees. You don't need any of that stuff. You buy with Apple Pay if you wanted to. It's the easiest transaction, like just like you're buying a t-shirt. But then once you kind of cross the chasm into the world, I do want to educate the user of why this matters and why this is true ownership and why you should care about this stuff and why this is a paradigm shift. So to do my job well, to the best of my ability, I'm achieving both of those things, is getting people into the world of Web3 and blockchain by making it super easy and make it the best 0 to 1 experience you have in crypto. But then once you're here and you have these assets, open you up to a world that's like, wow, this is really interesting and this is really powerful because I own these assets and nobody can take them away from me like they potentially could in a Roblox or a Fortnite or a Minecraft or something like that. So the answer is I'd like to do both, and that's really the hard job. It's typically you got to pick one or the other, but that's what kind of Cryptoys is trying to do to kind of cross that chasm.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess my final question for you is, you know, I just want to be topical. This week and this past weekend, I've seen a ton of conversation around like all the IP challenges that were released by the new Sora app that just came out, right?
Yes.
And so, you get to have Bart Simpson spewing hate, you know, and then Fox comes in and says, not under our watch, we can't do that. As someone who's already created these IP relationships, and I could also see the like complete opportunity to say, I want my best friend Leia or He-Man hanging out with me and have an ever going conversation. Where do you think the future goes with these digital collectibles, with the idea of AI and digital companions and all of that?
That's a really interesting topic. We could do 2 hours just on that question right there.
You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes. I mean, again, talk about a genie out of the bottle moment. Again, that's another one. Like, genie's out of the bottle with this Sora stuff, and it's like it's hard to put it back in once you see it. Man, it's a difficult one with a lot of nuance because, look, fan art and fan creation has been a thing forever, right? That's a big part of fandom, is remixing and creating your own fan art and putting it online. I mean, YouTube is filled with fan art and skits of Star Wars and Masters of the Universe and things like that. I think what's catching people off guard is just how one-to-one accurate the fidelity is on things like Sora. It's like literally you're creating your own episodes of The Simpsons and South Park, and it's just so damn good. It's one of those things that blockchain can provide a lot of solutions for. You see things like Story Protocol, right? And like putting these things on Story Protocol and then licensing out and things like that. I think Sora needs to figure out also their monetization model around such things. I mean, you had Sam Altman on a podcast just recently. I saw it on the Twitter feed, was talking about like we need to reevaluate all of our monetization models because it's just right now
they're losing billions.
They're losing a ton of money making these things, and every studio in the world is kind of barking at them, right? So how do we incentivize the studios? How do we do maybe rev shares with the studios? Empower fans, but also make sure that studios are getting their cut at the same time and making it so that everybody wins. It's an interesting conversation. A lot of what we've done with Cryptoys and what resonates with studios is, hey, there's built-in royalties on these assets in perpetuity, where, for example, on Roblox, if you play with a Spider-Man on Roblox, that's a fan-made Spider-Man that Disney's not seeing a cut of every time that's a transaction, right? But all of a sudden, if you have that on Cryptoys, you're getting a cut of that. There's full visibility and everybody wins and everybody's happy. And you're getting at the same time officially licensed product from some of the biggest names in the world. So I don't have all the answers to it. I think you and I are going to be very keen to see it all unfold. Huge paradigm shift, of course, that's happening right now. And I'm fascinated, obviously, for me as an entrepreneur and what it could mean from content creation standpoint. I'm just learning as I go along with you. It'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Love it. All right. Well, we're going to check in with what you're doing. I know you have some big stuff you're not allowed to talk about, so we're just going to tease that there's a lot of stuff coming in the Cryptoys universe. People should keep aware, and we'll put all of your contact info and your handles in the show notes. But thank you for coming on the show. It was great hanging out with you, IRL. Always been a big fan of what you're building at Cryptoys, and definitely think the evolution is going to be an exciting one for people to follow along with.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Please stay in touch. There is a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. Excited to chat about that more. And yeah, thank you, Sam and CoinDesk for having me.